do something. And depending what your profession is, depending how much time you've got and so on, then you'll have a different answer. But there's so much you can do. I do think it's really important at the moment to make a big noise and to make sure your voice gets heard. And on this point about Steve Rotherham, he's making the right noises in some ways, but I think the time has come for him to really move from sitting on the fence, which I think is what he's been doing to date on this issue, and come out very clearly against these road schemes, which he's not yet done. That's what he needs to do now. And in fact, what he could be doing right now is he could be writing to the Secretary of State for Transport and asking them to appoint independent experts in sustainable infrastructure to really research and cost all the alternatives, truly sustainable infrastructure, rather than just the options that are on the table at the moment. And unfortunately, Steve Rotherham's not done that yet. I think the time has come for him to absolutely do that.
In actual fact, I was talking to Steve Rotherham. A couple of us were talking to only a week or two ago, and the point he made about this is that although there are 6 local authorities in the Liverpool City region, each one acts independently. He is not in a position to impose anything on any of the local authorities. Each local authority acts on its own volition. So everything that goes on here is decided first and foremost by Sefton. If I could just make one little point. Somebody mentioned before about highways, about the public being involved with the planning for ports, for the air quality or what have you. The High Court judgment in 2016 requires that the public must be involved in all committees, plans and discussions regarding the air quality. That's the law. That's what the High Court judgment, Lord Justice Garland, gave, right? Liverpool City Region have set up a Merseyside task force to deal with air pollution. And the only people who are allowed on that are councillors. Nobody else, just councillors, elected representatives, who have never even read the paperwork.
Can I actually reply to
that last point? Yeah, I think
yeah.
Fair enough.
Because I'm one of those people, actually, John, that sits on that committee, and that committee is not made up of just councillors. It's made up of officers, it's made up of people from the NHS, it's made up from a whole range of other people who've been invited. It's got the DFT, it's got Highways England, it's got a whole range of partners, so you're actually incorrect in the information that you've just given to the audience.
No members of the general public.
No members of the general public.
Okay, let's one at a time, please, sir.
I'll ask my question for Ken.
Yeah, of course, go.
I'll step on that. This is This is taken from the Port Access Steering Group, which I'm sure Paulettte knows all about.
No, don't.
A review of existing and future demand for HGV parking commissioned by Sefton Council on behalf of the Combined Authority in 2015 identified a potential need for new parking provision in the future. Further work commissioned in 2016 confirmed the future demand and the feasibility of some potential sites was assessed. There are significant difficulties with bringing forward any of the sites considered, so the importance of providing a HGV parking site in the city region needs to be considered further by the Combined Authority. So my question is, have these sites been identified? Now we are in 2020 and the port activities and associated traffic is increasing rapidly.
Okay, interesting question. There was a question over here as well. I'm just going to take 2 at a time. Yep, sorry.
Hi, I have a question about data. I'm Rebecca, and I'm kind of known as Rebecca the maths lady because I read data and sort of work out what's going on. First bit to Councillor Paulettte Lappin. Don't worry, it's not too bad. I've been reading the data about pollution. I'm really concerned about the pollution. I know everybody's raised it. It is horrific. The cancer rates in Lineker Ward and the surrounding wards are absolutely eye-watering. So I've been looking at the pollution monitoring, and like others, there are big gaps and I have concerns. I'm particularly pleased to hear about you putting in place the digital monitoring near the port. That is great. Now that needs to go transparently online so that the community can see it, so that they can analyse what's going on, when it's going up, when it's going down, so they can come to better understand the issues and what's driving the pollution. Please would you make a commitment to getting that online transparently very soon. The second part is to our friend from Friends of the Earth. You seem to think that this plan for the road has come from Highways England and that they're the architects of this. It didn't. It came from reports that came from our combined political leadership, commissioning experts, spending £500,000 working out what is the best way forward, which came up with the plan for the road that then got commissioned by Highways England. The first report goes back to 2003, that £500,000 report. There's been various reports since. So it then becomes the responsibility of our political leadership to challenge those reports and come up with better plans or pressure to get more depth analysis if they're not happy with it. And I don't see the record of it. So I'm encouraged to hear that Bill has found that those reports are wrong, and has found that if we build more roads, we will add to the roadside pollution crisis, because the reports concluded it would reduce it because the vehicles would go through at a constant speed rather than sitting gridlocked churning out fumes. So please, I know you have caseworkers and that your comments will be based in fact, so please could you publish the analysis on which your comments were made, and also the case for the rail tunnel, what you've done, because obviously there are big concerns about going through the ammunitions and the asbestos and the problems with building it on the road. So can you publish the work you've done to prove that that's plausible? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that's a good point. Firstly, where are the HGV car parks planned? Plans should be in train. Are we going to get transparency on the digital monitoring? How do we rebut these reports? And final question, business case for the rail. I will start with Bill, because I think you've taken quite a lot, Councillor.
Thank you very much. I've just sort of been thinking back to the Michael Gove 2018 Summer Air Quality Report, which actually just goes back to a few things that were said earlier on. It makes the point that the air quality as a result of the 5036 it's not directly the council's responsibility. So while Sefton is named as one of the councils with a real problem, not actually Sefton's responsibility, and it's not actually something that Sefton can directly address, because it's a Highways England road. So the work that Sefton's doing actually is in spite of the difficulties of them not having responsibility. I'd forgotten to make that point earlier. Now, as to the business cases, I think the whole problem is that nobody did the work, nobody gave the rail option, nobody put in the time and effort to put it as an alternative. That's the point. That it was only the two road options that were ever put forward. And so unless that had happened, we were not able to make the comparison. And that's actually the whole case that was being made by the local authority and by others, including me, that it should have been one of the options alongside the option of a road tunnel. So it was the lack of the work going in that was the real problem here. It's not for me to make to put together a business plan, because I'm not the technical expert. I do not have the resources. I don't have the team to do it. But that's the work that should have gone in by government, rather than it being given to Highways England as a fait accompli, because they're only ever going to come up with a road as you said earlier, Stuart. So yeah, I think that's the key point. And as to the level of additional emissions, I think we have to assume that if you dramatically increase the level of road transport, you are going to increase the emissions. Now, again, we don't have the data because the work hasn't been done at that level. Now, they're saying that the traffic would flow more freely. But again, going back, I think, to your opening remarks, the problem is when you build more roads, you get more traffic, and inevitably you get to a point fairly quickly where the traffic slows down again, and you're just adding to the emissions.
Okay, brilliant.
Can I just come back on?
I'll just, hang on a second. Thanks, John. Over to you, Stuart.
So yeah, obviously there was reference made there to historic decisions of the council and all of the various bodies that are involved in the Port Access Steering Group. Now, as a campaign, people send us all sorts of stuff, you know, meeting minutes, documents and all that sort of stuff. As a group, we look at it and we work out, does this actually change where we're at now? So things that took place 10, 20 years ago or even less time, there were feasibility studies commissioned by the council into how do you solve access to and from the port, and some of those would have said a road, some of those would have said this, that, and the other, and clearly that has ended up in being passed to central government, and they've looked at it and said we'll go for a road. But in the time since, and this is what we have to deal with, it's like what's happening here now. A climate emergency has happened. What decisions that were taken 5, 10, 15 years ago, and those kind of ancient ways of thinking of doing infrastructure, they're sort of off the table. I think there's no point in looking at solving these problems with 1970s solutions. It just doesn't work anymore. And if, just to make this abundantly clear, if somebody showed us a smoking gun and said, here's a document which says, for argument's sake, Sefton Council are behind this road, but they've just brought a judicial review against it to save face, and they're actually working with highways, like all of these things that sort of go through people's minds, we would make that public. But the problem is, while we discuss this and debate what happened, who said what and when, Highways England are going to build this road. If we don't unite as communities and say, no, actually, a road's not good enough for people of Liverpool, for the people of Sefton. So that's who the enemy is, in inverted commas, as well as the Department for Transport and actually the business interest behind this road. So that's where all of our work is focused on, who is actually trying to do this now.
HGV Park, yes, it was a feasibility study, and yes, it's exactly what Stuart said. It's a series. Sometimes local authorities have to actually look at different options, work out whether they're viable, and then send them up. I should imagine that's still under discussion, but it's not something that we're actually discussing at the moment.
There's no conclusions being made as of yet.
Not of yet.
From 2015 to 2020.
Well, that's what I've just said. There's been no conclusion.
I've seen the updates for the Port Access Steering Group, 2015, 16, 17. I've seen nothing beyond.
No, because I think it was actually shelved. Well, I'm not on the Port Access Group. I don't know. But what I do know is that as a member of the Cabinet, if we were proposing to actually put in HGV car parking spaces in the borough, we would have actually been made aware of that, and I have not been made aware of that, no.
Could I just correct you on...
I think you have to come back to that one, sir, if I may. The pollution data.
Oh,
yes.
yeah,
Are we going to get transparency on the pollution data?
Yeah. Yes, I'll go back and ask the officer concerned and actually see if I can get it online.
Great. Sorry, so I think you can take that up another time, because it's a very specific issue.
To what Rebecca was saying about the 2003 and the comment from Stuart that you can't be backtracking all the time to say, well, that was something we decided 10 years ago or 15 years ago. The plan to develop this port began in the 1990s. In fact, it began in 1970 odd, when we made it, 1983 when we declared it a free port. But that's when it started. But in the 1990s, the plan was set in motion to build this port, with digging out the channels in the river and all the rest of the paraphernalia that went along with it. The point about it was, that was at that point when the infrastructure was discussed in the entire region, what was needed to service the port. And what came from that report in 2003, I believe it was released, I might be wrong on this, but I believe it was released in October of 2003, and by January 2004, it had found its way into the archives of Sefton Council. The interesting thing about that report, costing £500,000, was that Sefton Council were the lead authority in the whole process. So any plans that were decided in 2003, in exactly the same as the plan to build the port was decided, were there in black and white.
Thank you very much. It's a good thing we put you two on opposite ends, isn't it? Okay, I'm now going to ask everyone to make their closing remarks. Craig, we'll start with you, if that's okay.
Thanks very much, and thanks for having me here tonight. Look, I think just a couple of things to touch on that we haven't talked about tonight, but just to give a reality check as to why it's so important to stop both these roads. We've talked a lot about air pollution, and it's a horrendous impact that it can have on people's lives. And it's worth noting that although the government has time and again been breaking the law on air quality standards in this country, that was European law, and there is something that we've got to really watch out for over the coming months. Because as Brexit, of course, as Brexit's happened, and as we get to the end of this year, that will be replaced with UK laws. And the Environment Bill currently going through Parliament to replace those EU laws on air quality actually says at the moment that the government will then set new targets in 2023. Why the delay? And I would rather suspect that they're going to use this opportunity to change the goalposts on air quality. And that's something to really watch, and that's a very big concern. But a second point about it is sometimes people say to me, oh, but what if all our vehicles are going to go electric? You know, maybe air pollution will be cleared up anyway. I would say don't be fooled by that. Actually, all cars, particularly cars, tyres produce a huge amount of plastic pollution that comes off car tyres. And actually the latest science shows that that's a very big concern. Billions of microplastics coming off car tyres, which will exist even with electric vehicles, so that's still a concern. And if we're going to achieve our carbon targets, actually, even if we could switch to zero-emission cars tonight, to all electric vehicles in this country, we would still have to reduce traffic on the road by about 20% to actually meet our carbon targets. So the fact is, we've got to reduce the amount of traffic on the road, however it's powered, and that means we should not be building new roads, because as we've heard from many people tonight, building new roads just creates more traffic.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, thank you again for coming along and for the questions and for listening so patiently. Look, I mean, I've just fought a general election where we had a green industrial revolution at the heart of our manifesto, and we were absolutely thumped. And the electorate said no to us. They said yes, in many of you in this room will have done, in this region, sure, but we didn't across the country. We're not in a position as a Labour Party in Parliament or with the powers that we have in the city region to do things on a global level. So we have to look at what we can achieve. Because in that manifesto, we set out very ambitious plans of an ambition to hit net zero in 2030, which meant the electrification of our entire car industry, retaining the jobs. It meant the kind of investments we see in the city region, actually, of hydrogen trains possibly built by Alstom in Widnes, the tidal barrage in the Mersey, and a complete switch with the kind of just transition, the kind of jobs that take people with us, but we didn't get the mandate to do it. So what can we do? So I shall be in Parliament, Peter will be in Parliament, our colleagues in the Labour Party will be in Parliament, trying to put pressure on Boris Johnson and Dominic Cummings and whoever's in the Cabinet to make the kind of changes and the just transition that is needed to transform the lives and the prosperity of people across the country in moving to a low carbon economy as soon as possible. But we're going to need to do things here as well. So put that pressure on, make that case. I think we do need to work together. I know, Steve and I talk. I know he's on board with this, but I think we're going to have to really accelerate what we do collectively as well as individually. And I think that is what we can do locally. It is what we should do locally, because, as you were saying, Craig, and sorry for calling you Stuart earlier and mixing you up. Thank you. The point is this: those people living in Lineker Ward will not wait for that just transition. So we have to take that action now. We've got to stop these roads now, and we've got to come up with alternatives now.
go to you last. I think it's only fair you get closer.
Well, again, I'd like to thank everybody for turning out, because it was a fairly foul night, really, with all the weather. I'd like to echo the lady on the front row's views, which is, if we don't work together, if we don't pull together, they'll defeat us, basically. So we actually have to stand and work together and try very hard. And none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. But if we actually try very hard, then at least we can actually make the very best and do our very best for the people in this area. And that's what's most fundamentally important. We have to have an aspiration, and Sefton Council, together with other local authorities, are working towards a climate change emergency. By May, we will have actually produced a strategy and a delivery plan which people can actually look at, and then we're going to get involved with consultation and engage with local people and see how they want to feedback and what they actually think about it. But I would make an impassioned appeal that if we don't cooperate, they will definitely pick us off. Thank you.
Very brief.
Thanks very much, everybody. I get very passionate. I really am very, very passionate on this issue, on all of these issues, to be honest with you. I'm a member of the Labour Party, and I don't want anyone to pull the Labour Party back to where we were. The issues that go on here go on to the days before we had total control of a Labour authority, before with the Lib Dems and everybody else, all the mixed mash that we had for years and years. So, but I am absolutely, totally committed, passionately, to making sure that the first thing we achieve is complete, total monitoring, digital, hourly and monitoring at every one of our schools and vulnerable locations. Now, the interesting thing about that is, only 2 months ago, the government decided, just before Brexit, that we would, in actual fact, allow the public to decide where the monitors go and what type of monitors they want. But we haven't heard anything on that yet. I don't think anybody's ready. But thanks very much. I really do appreciate it. And if I sound really angry sometimes, I've only got 2 voices. Very quiet or very angry. Sorry about that.
So Stuart, I think it's only fair you finish as the person representing the core of this debate.
I didn't say that. I mean, like, it's a divisive issue, but one of the biggest reasons it's so divisive, I think, is what Craig was talking about before, this deliberate tactic that Highways England take with communities. How do you get, it's what is it, the art of war? You pit 2 communities against each other. The reason we're fighting to protect Rimrose Valley is much wider than Rimrose Valley. It's about the clean air it provides, and that's to all of the communities in South Sefton, not just the ones who occupy the place next to it. Yeah, but it's about the green space, which we know is critical for mental health, and it's just that sort of intangible thing that countryside gives a community. It feels wrong, this does. That's the reason we're all fighting it. It feels wrong, and it's being imposed on us by central government. If we can't unite and oppose, without getting too political, this government with these objectives who prioritise big business over the interests of regular people, you know, we need to unite and come together on this. Nobody is going to stand here and say, do you know what, we don't care about the schools next to the busy roads on Church Road. It's completely wrong. But we don't solve it by building another 4 lanes of traffic through a country park or a piece of green space and replicating and perpetuating those problems for the schools and houses who'll be next to that road. It shouldn't be us and them. It has to be about all of us, and we all need to unite and say no to Highways England. Go back to the drawing board and go back to the Department for Transport and give some of this money that you're itching to spend in the north.
Okay, thank you very much to all of our panel. I'm able to Estelle for closing remarks.
Yes, thank you very much to our panel and to our chair, who has to run actually to the train station, because this is one bit of transport that also needs improving, is connections late out of Liverpool. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you all for your questions. We've got another 5 minutes or so before we finish, so if there's anything that you would like to speak to sort of one-to-one with panel members, we're done with questions from the floor, I'm afraid. But if you would like to speak to panel members just before they leave, please to take that opportunity. And as I said, If you would like to stay involved in Friends of the Earth campaigns, best way to do that is to join the Liverpool Friends of the Earth mailing list. There's a sign-up sheet on the registration table. And also, there was mention of Stuart Rotherham's role as Metro Mayor for the City region. We know that the Metro mayoral elections are happening on the 7th of May this year, and here in the City region, Friends of the Earth, Liverpool Friends of the Earth and the climate action groups that we're working with locally will be campaigning to engage all candidates in that election and to get the climate emergency and other environmental issues right to the top of their agenda. So again, if you want to stay involved in that, then please do join the mailing list and come along to meetings. Thanks everyone.
Thank you to the panel. Thank you for the Friends of the Earth for doing this. Somebody asked what can we do. On Sunday we're going for a walk. We're going for a walk through Rimrose Valley. It'll be at 11:45. We're assembling in C4's car park. We're joining with Cllr in Lancashire because we're going to have a walk up the beach as well. So that's what you can do. Come for a walk with us. 40 odd people have signed up already, so I hope there'll be a lot of people there. See you then. Thank you.